Alright everyone, so today I wanted to spotlight an epic champion that I really feel like she does not end up getting the recognition that she deserves. Probably going to be the #1 most underrated free-to-play epic champion, and I am talking about none other than, of course, High Katoon. Now, High Katoon is an absolutely phenomenal epic champion. Definitely not going to be the best, not even the best epic, but considering she is a free-to-play epic, you can end up getting her fairly early on in your Raid Shadow Legends gameplay. For what she actually offers, the skills that she has, what she's going to bring to a team, she is absolutely invaluable. And even at this point in the game, I am still using her in many of my teams. I know that there are a lot of mid and end game players that will eventually end up outgrowing her. That is absolutely true. If you do get certain champions, you can end up outgrowing her, but she could still be very valuable as a member in many of your teams. So with that being said, let's get into some of the basics, like how do you end up getting her? Well, the good news is she is going to be a free-to-play epic that is fairly easy to get. You don't have to do anything crazy, no crazy fusions or anything along those lines. You are quite simply going to end up getting High Katoon from your daily login rewards. As you can see here, these are the 90-day login rewards and all the goodies that you're going to get from that last month. But if you take a look and see at 30 days, you do get High Katoon as a login reward. You can also end up getting her from regular shards. There was also a couple of fusions where she was one of the sub-components, but for those of you guys who are newer, you don't really have to worry about all that stuff too much because you will get a copy of her from your 30 days of login rewards. So that's going to be the first thing on the list right there. Now, the second thing is what makes her so good? Well, if you end up taking a look at her skills, you'll end up seeing very quickly that she has some very useful skills, and her overall skill kit is absolutely phenomenal for a free-to-play epic champion. So let's take a look and see what we have here. So if we end up going to skills, we've got 3 skills in an aura. Let's start off with the auto attack skill right here. Imperial Grace attacks one enemy, has a 25% chance of placing a 30% decreased speed debuff for 2 turns, damage based on attack. So already right off the bat, for an auto attack type ability, this is definitely not bad. Now, whenever it comes to auto attacks, I always say as a generalization, anything better than just attacks one enemy 1 times is going to be good. And on this auto attack, not only do you have attacks on enemy, but you also have that added chance to place a decreased speed debuff. Now, decreased speed debuff is nice. It's not, in my opinion, going to be quite as good as decreased attack or decreased defense, but it is still a solid debuff to have on an auto attack skill, which is always a nice plus to have. So right off the bat, the auto attack is not bad. It's definitely decent, above average, I would say. Now, moving on to the second skill, Rally the Horde, you'll quickly see that this skill is actually very comparable to another very good champion, but the champion that it's comparable to is not going to be an epic. So if we take a look at the skill, fills the turn meters of all allies by 15% and places a 30% increased speed buff on all allies for 2 turns. So overall, out of all the skills in the game, this is going to be one of the best support type skills that champions can end up offering. It's a turn meter fill. Even though it's only a 15% turn meter fill, it is still a turn meter fill nonetheless, and that alone is a very strong component to have for an ability. It also has a 30% increased speed buff on all allies for 2 turns with a 3-turn cooldown once you end up booking it. That is also incredibly powerful. Of course, speed being the king of all stats, having a buff to your entire team that's going to increase their speed is extremely powerful. And this ability is actually very similar, if not pretty much exactly the same, as another incredibly good champion, and that champion is going to end up being in the High Elves, and it's going to be none other than Apothecary. So it's actually very similar to Apothecary's Boon of Speed skill right here. Places a 30% increased speed buff on all allies for 2 turns, fills the turn meter of all allies by 15%. So as you can see, 5-turn cooldown, but of course with skill books you can lower this down to a 3-turn cooldown, and this is going to be one of the reasons that High Katoon is so good. So this skill right here, Boon of Speed, is one of the reasons why Apothecary is so good, as well as of course his heal, his very strong auto attack, very solid rare champion, probably going to be one of the best rare champions in the game. And now you have High Katoon here, who also has a very similar skill except on an epic champion. Rally the Horde, also 3-turn cooldown, so very, very strong. But the thing is, High Katoon also has some other things that she brings to the table. Just like Apothecary, this isn't the only thing that makes him good. Rally the Horde is not going to be the only thing that makes her good. You had that auto attack that had that decreased speed debuff. First of all, Now moving on to her third skill, Shamanic Lightning. Attacks all enemies, has a 50% chance of decreasing the turn meter by 15%. Her skills are also based on attack. Important to note, even though her skills are based on attack, she is still classified as a support-based champion. Now this skill, it is an AoE. In my opinion, this is probably going to be the weakest of her skills. Not really going to be the reason that makes Haikatoon super good. I mean, it's still an AoE, which is nice to have. It does have that 50% chance of decreasing the turn meter, which can definitely come in very handy in certain situations. But with all the other stuff that she ends up offering to the table, this is still probably going to be one of her weaker elements right here. Now, the other thing that makes her very good is actually not going to be one of her 3 skills. It's going to end up being her 4th skill, I guess technically skill, but it is her aura. And it's a speed aura right here. It increases ally speed in all battles by 19%. So you guys probably know by now that speed is the king of all stats, and having a speed aura that applies to your entire team in all battles, even though it is only by 19%, which is considered one of the weaker speed auras on an epic champion. You can definitely end up getting auras that go, I believe, up to 21, 23, 25%, something along those lines. It is very versatile. It's not just ally speed in the arena or ally speed in dungeons or anything like that. It's ally speed in all battles by 19%. So very strong aura to have on an epic champion because it is so versatile. And this aura in combination with this Rally the Horde skill on an epic champion, which again, this skill is very comparable to that very strong skill that Apothecary has, with the added benefit of having a decreased speed debuff on her auto attack, and of course this AoE skill all to boot. Incredibly powerful skill kit on a support based champion. So this is going to be the reason that Haikatoon is so good. The primary thing is that Rally the Horde buff and that combination of the ally speed aura. Now, in Raid Shadow Legends, as you get further along the game, you're going to realize that champions that can end up filling multiple roles in a team are going to be very, very valuable, and you're definitely going to want to end up prioritizing those champions over other champions that can only end up doing one thing in particular. And the fact that Haikatoon has this Rally the Horde skill right here, which fills that similar role to Apothecary. Now, of course, Apothecary is going to have really good uses for this and some other things, especially considering he has that heal. But she has this skill right here, and the fact that she also has your speed aura covered. You know, those are two very important, very good things that you're going to want to have covered in a team formation, and that is what is going to make her so powerful. So now as we get into the actual skills, and sorry, not skills, the gear, we have to consider that even though she is an attack-based champion, you're probably not actually going to build her attack-based. Now, this is something that I actually decided to do early on when I ended up getting her, is I did build her attack-based, and she was incredibly strong, because the only thing that I ended up using her for was the arena. So I actually wanted to end up getting this third skill right here with as much damage and as much burst potential to nuke team members down in the arena, because I didn't end up using her for anything else. However, as a generalization, you don't want to do that, and what you want to do is you actually want to gear her more speed and support style. So you want to have a lot of speed, of course, because you want her taking a lot of turns so she can end up applying her buff right here as much as possible. And you also want a lot of survivability because you want her to stay alive longer so that she's also, of course, applying this buff as much as she possibly can. So those are kind of going to be the more general things that you want to look for when it comes to her gear. That's why you're going to see that now that I have her geared out, she really is mostly focused on speed and survivability. Her artifacts are going to be defense-based, HP-based, speed, of course, stuff like that. You'll see that she does have a lot of defensive stats. So that's probably going to be the road that you want to end up going down instead of the offense route. Now, the reason why I emphasize this is because it will say that the skills are damage based on attack, but Haikatoon is not going to be a damage dealing based champion. She can hit pretty hard with this skill, and even this skill right here, it can hit pretty hard, but I would say for most people, you're going to really want to prioritize on keeping her alive so that she can apply her buff more, because you're probably going to get more value out of keeping her alive longer and getting this buff applied to your entire team. And then, of course, all your team members are attacking more frequently rather than just specifically building her up to do more damage. Then she's going to be really squishy, she's going to die, and you won't gain the benefit of this buff right here. So something to keep in mind. Even though her skills do say attack, I would not focus on that personally. So that is going to be gearing options right there. Now, as we move on to gearing, let's talk about masteries. So masteries are quite important because, very similar to what I was just talking about right now, even though you are going to still end up picking the offense tree most likely, you could go down the defense tree, but I still think offense is just too good, especially considering War Master and Giant Slayer. There are some very important support masteries that you are absolutely going to want to end up picking up on her. So let's just go through the offense ones first, because I don't think this one is going to be quite as important for what she's going to offer. So you have Deadly Precision is what I took. Keen Strike, these are pretty much always going to be mandatory right here. The other passives are, you could always take Shield Breaker if you're very specifically going after shields, but again, because she's not really going to be a damage dealing champion specifically, you don't really need to focus on those DPS masteries quite as much. That's why even in the offense tree, I really aimed at survivability type masteries if possible. So as we get into the third row right here, we have Life Drinker, one of my favorite masteries because it's kind of like a mini version of Lifesteal. Heals by 5% of the damage inflicted with 50% HP or less. You have some other damage dealing masteries, but I would probably stay away from those, again, because she's going to be more of a support based champion. Increases damage inflicted by 6% when attacking targets with higher max HP. Bring It Down is just a very strong mastery, even though it is damage based. The other options in this tree at this point are probably just not going to really compare. Cycle of Violet, she's just not going to end up doing enough damage for that skill to really be worth it. Next here, you have Methodical, increases damage by the default skill by 2% up to 10%. Again, you run into that situation where there's just not really any other suitable choices right here for the offense tree, and of course that leads to War Master, which is going to be pretty darn big. Even though she's not a damage-based champion, you are still going to want to end up getting War Master, especially for things like clan boss and high-level dungeons. This will definitely make a nice difference in the actual damage that she does bring. Now, in my opinion, more importantly, are going to be the support masteries. So we start off with Pinpoint Accuracy, of course, because we have a debuff. So immediately, once you have a debuff on your champions, you're going to want to try to get accuracy to make sure that those debuffs do end up applying. The second tier, I have Exalted Death. Not really super important, honestly, but I think at this point there just were no other valuable options. We're not focusing on DPS, so we don't really need to worry about the offense tree, so I would rather just pick up a little something extra in the support tree. Increases accuracy by 20 when this champion has no skills on cooldowns. Probably going to have skills on cooldowns a good amount of the time, but the second row in Masteries is just not very competitive. Now, when we end up getting to the third row, that's when we start to get to masteries that we're definitely going to want to keep an eye on. This is a very important one. Rapid Response has a 30% chance of increasing the turn meter by 10% when a buff cast by this champion is removed or expires. Has a 30% chance of increasing the turn meter by 10% when a debuff cast by this champion is removed or expires. Arcane Celerity. Out of these two, I would say that Rapid Response is going to be the more important one because she's going to be applying way more buffs than debuffs from this Rally the Horde, but you do still have a debuff, so there is still something there on the auto attack, so you can still end up getting benefit from Arcane Celerity nonetheless, although this one is definitely going to be more important. Then in the next row, you have some very, very good masteries. Cycle of Magic has a 5% chance of decreasing the cooldown of a random skill by 1 turn. That's always going to be a good mastery for champions that have skills with cooldowns. Lore of Steel, I always like to take this mastery because you do end up using basic gear sets quite a bit on champions, more than you probably think. So increasing the set bonus of basic artifacts is just extra stats for free from a mastery. Always going to be a good pick. And then in the last tier right here, we have Lasting Gifts. Has a 30% chance to extend the duration of any buff cast by this champion by 1 turn. Probably going to be the most buffing type support mastery for High Katoon, because this could end up increasing the duration of that Rally the Horde buff right here. So that is going to be incredibly, incredibly powerful. And Master Hexer has a 30% chance to extend the duration of any debuff cast by this champion. Again, not quite going to be as important, but you will still gain benefit because Imperial Grace, the auto attack, does have that added debuff on it. So that's just a glance at the masters that I took. You can end up making some minor changes here or there, but as a generalization, especially for the support masteries, you're definitely going to want to get really important things like Rapid Response and Lasting Gifts. Those are probably going to be some of the most important support masteries that you can end up getting. Now finally, just a quick run through of Minotaur. Now I'll just do this as a bit of an example just so you can see, although this is something you keep in mind is that Haikatune is a support-based champion, so you will see her activating her skills, you will see her still using her damage-dealing abilities, but they're not really going to be doing a lot of damage. If you're going to be paying attention to this, the most important thing to look at is just seeing how often she applies that Rally the Horde buff, how good it is, and also the fact that, of course, she is in that aura slot, which means that my entire team is going to get that 19% bonus to speed. So this should take about 90 seconds or so. She has a very high speed, the way that I have her built, which is very important because you're going to want to be applying that Rally the Horde buff as much as possible. So if you take a look at the actual champions, you'll see the Rally the Horde buff is going to be that icon that has the shoe on it. She does take a good amount of turns. There's that speed debuff as well, which is nice. You know, always nice to just have anything extra on the auto attack that you possibly can. So just as an added little bonus right there. Now, if you take a look at her actual damage, you'll see it's pretty insignificant. I did have her geared before to do a lot more damage, but she was a lot squishier and dying a lot more. And after regearing her, even though she does way less damage now than she did before, I think that she is way better off because she actually survives for a very long time now in my clan boss runs. She's boosting the damage by all my other champions by quite a bit. I noticed that my clan boss damage went up now that she survives longer, and yes, even though she's not as useful for bursting in PvP, that's only one of the few things that I end up using her. So I would say for most people, I would go down the route of survivability for Haikatune. But if you just use her for one thing specifically, like bursting in PvP, you know, you can make that choice to go with pure damage because her skills do scale off of attack. But I don't think that's going to be the road that many people end up going down based on how good she can be in other situations if she actually stays alive longer. So getting close to being done with this run right here, just so you can kind of see a highlight of her buffs, her skills, her abilities. You can see lots of Rally the Horde procs from her skill. And with that all being said, I think that's pretty much everything that you need to know about Haikatune. Once again, going to be, in my opinion, one of the most underrated free-to-play epic champions. Absolutely fantastic, especially to those of you guys who are newer. You might end up outgrowing her at some point as you get to the mid and late game, but I would say she is one of the most versatile epics that you can end up building. So with that all being said, that is going to end up being it for the video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Really hope that you enjoyed. If you did, consider subscribing. Helps out. Thank you to those of you guys who toss a quick like. And of course, if you're interested in more raid videos, they should be popping up on the screen right about now. Have a great day, everyone. Take care. And until next time, this is Salt of the Salty Guild, signing out.